Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. Time for another episode of the RTI Lowdown. I'm your host, Bob Baskerville, joined as always by the esteemed, famous, world-renowned, and he's my friend too, but it's a good dude, Chris Lowe from On3 Sports. Chris, how you doing, man?
I thought you were talking about yourself there for a minute, Bob. But no, it's great, man. I'm doing well. It's always good. The weather's better. We're in March. Now they got to figure out a way to get the men's and women's basketball teams playing a little bit better here during the most important part of the season.
No kidding. And I mean, that's the whole point today. We got a big show for you to talk through some of this stuff. We have turned the page on the calendar to March, like CeeLo just said. And that means March Madness, Selection Sunday. That's now 2 short weeks away. And the story with our Vols remains one that's a continuous, predictably unpredictable one, as the boys weather a tough week just in time to close in on the postseason. We'll break down 2 tough losses for the Vols and discuss the prospect of the biggest loss of all, and that's on the roster, again, as we enter the most important time of the season. We'll get additional perspective on the situation when we're joined by VFL and one of the radio voices of the Vols, Steve Hamer. March also means it's full steam ahead for college baseball, and Josh Elander's crew just wrapped up their stiffest string of games so far this season before they enter SEC play. We'll discuss what we saw and take an early optimism level check on the team. But before that, let me say a few things. Let's give a shout out to our sponsor first and foremost. This episode is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help you with your home, your car, or business coverage, don't look any further. You got them right here. It's the Tate Insurance Group. We always appreciate their partnership with the Lowdown. Also, for all of you watching or listening, make sure if you're watching us on YouTube, on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, that you like and subscribe. That's really, really important. We're building those numbers. We appreciate that support. If you're listening to us as a podcast, make sure you download us and make us part of your regular routine. We're available wherever you can find or listen to your podcasts. So let's move into topic A. Tennessee basketball. The Vols watched control of their SEC destiny completely evaporate in just 1 week. CeeLo, as we recorded this show 1 week ago, Tennessee was in a 3-way tie for second place in the SEC standings, had full control to lock in a top 4 finish in the conference, which would also mean a double bye in the conference tournament. With 4 games remaining in regular season play, the guys didn't need to win all those games to keep up that top 4 standing, but winning 3 of those last 4 would pretty much guarantee a double bye for the Vols. So about that, it started in Missouri and ended at home on Saturday night against Alabama. Tough week for Rick Barnes and his team.
It's that time of year where you just have to play your best ball. And I think anybody who listened to Coach Barnes after the game last night would tell you, I think his greatest frustration is he feels like this team in critical moments, not just critical moments, but throughout the game, aren't doing some of the things that they are practicing, some of the things they have done well and drilled and practice, i.e. high ball picks and playing those screens the way you need to. Certainly gets a team like Alabama, who has guard play that's just out of this world.
Right.
And time again, Tennessee didn't do the things defensively, which has been the hallmark of that team, is making it hard for teams to score basket and certainly not letting them get to the basket. I mean, I don't know about you, but LeBaron Philon looked like Allen Iverson.
He was great.
He was outstanding. Acuff's a great player, a guard. I mean, there's you look around the league, there's several really good guards. I'm not so sure if you said, Chris, you can pick any guard in the SEC that I wouldn't take Philon, because he is fearless getting to the basket. And there honestly were a couple times, Bob, when he got to the basket and finished, that I felt like he got bumped pretty good and they didn't call the foul. Could have been some and ones, but they just could not stay in front of him. They couldn't keep him from scoring. down the stretch. I think Alabama was 7 of 9 from the field to finish the game. And Tennessee had Bama's number coming into that game. But, boy, last night, Bama, sometimes you got to give credit where credit's due. Alabama was a better basketball team, the tougher basketball team, the team that made more plays. And I thought really for an Alabama team that's not or hasn't been very good on defense, they played about as well defensively last night. Now, it was easier, and we'll talk about this here in a minute, to play defense on Tennessee when Nate Ament's not in the game.
Yeah.
Probably one of Nate Oates' team's better defensive performances when they needed it last night.
Yeah, and I mean, that's going to be a hot topic for discussion, not just on our show, but probably in the next couple of days, is what the status of Nate Ament will be. And we're going to be joined, like I said, in a moment by Steve Hamer. I'll be interested to get his take because there's probably a compelling argument that we don't see him, for example, in that South Carolina game on Tuesday night. And that's going to be interesting. So there's a lot of variables, I think, to discuss there. But before we get to it, let's just take a minute and kind of recap this week. We talked a little bit about Alabama, but the week started with a trip to Como, to Columbia, Missouri, to take on the Missouri Tigers, who are very, very tough at home. I think they only have 4 losses on their home court in the last 2 seasons. And, man, that game started out great. The Vols looked strong out of the gates, but fell back into bad habits en route to a 69-65 loss. Tennessee was up 14-4 early, looking great. Kind of went downhill from there, though. They were still leading at halftime, but in the second half, between the turnovers and between super hot second half shooting from Missouri, they shot 62% from the field in the second half. That did the Vols in. And this guy by the name of T.O. Barrett, who I had never heard of, has a career high against Tennessee, 28 points. And I think that speaks to what we were talking about and we've talked about for a couple of weeks now, Chris. This Tennessee team's good on defense, but they are not at the level they've been the past couple of years prior.
No, and you're probably not going to be when you take away 2 of the best defenders in the country, Meshack and Zakai, Ziegler. And I think they fight hard, they play hard, an excellent rebounding team. But keeping the ball in front of them has been a problem. And obviously against Missouri, defending the 3-point.
Yeah.
And that's really 2 games in a row now where other teams have sort of gotten what they wanted to, excuse me, Bob, offensively in the second half against Tennessee.
Yeah.
A lot of big scoring outputs, Missouri and Alabama most recently. But losing that game to Missouri on the road is, I don't know, that's a cardinal sin. As you said, they've been very good at home. We talked last week, Bob. I felt coming out of that Vanderbilt win, that Missouri game might even be tougher for Tennessee. It was a tough turnaround. They had to go back on the road. So you watch college basketball long enough, you see those types of games. So that one, even coming out of that game, Tennessee was coming home to play Alabama.
Right.
I didn't think it was a killer. But to follow that game up and lose yet another double-digit lead and potentially lose your best player for I don't know how long, hopefully not too long, you wonder, much like I did a few weeks ago when they lost at home to Kentucky and lost a 17-point lead, how this team will recover. I think that's the big question now, other than Nate's status going forward, is how this team bounced back. Rick's teams in the past have been really resilient. You thought maybe they would be down and they'd come back fighting, and they're certainly going to have to now as they finish the regular season.
Yeah, I mean, that's, agreed. The loss to Missouri, I agree with you. It dropped the Vols into 4th place in the standings, which still in good shape, right? But it only amplified what was an already important game with Alabama on Saturday even more. And we talked about that a little bit, and I just want to take a minute or two on that before we welcome our guest in. Tennessee led that game for 39 minutes and 38 seconds. Unfortunately, Alabama leads when it's most important at the very end. And, stop me if you heard this before. Vols race out to a big lead, up 12 points at halftime. And then Alabama gets hot in the second half. They shoot 52% from the field in the second half. They start hitting their threes, which we know is the straw that stirs their drink offensively. The Vols went cold in the second half. They hit 0 threes in the second. They only scored 2 points in the last 3 minutes and 40 seconds of the game. And I think you touched on this a minute ago, CeeLo. Defensively, while holding Alabama to their lowest point total of the season, Alabama scored 16 points, converted 8 of their last 9 possessions in the last 5 minutes of play. And I mean, we dominated on the boards like we typically do, but with 25 offensive rebounds, but only 25 second chance points, that's just not a great ratio right there. And also, this last thing I'll say, only 6 turnovers as a team in that game, which it felt like a lot more because I think some of them were very untimely late in the game. And this was the 5th loss this season for the Vols where they blew a double-digit lead. It's just become a pattern that's been very, very maddening. I know for fan bases, so you know that it has to be maddening for Rick Barnes.
Yeah, well, and it's I think at least 2 of the turnovers came when Gillespie was on the bench, and I think having not as many experienced guys on the perimeter is always, if you're any coach, it's tough to put your point guard on the bench, but he also can't play 37 minutes. You got to play guys and give them a rest. I think we have our guest, Stevie Hamer, VFL,
yes,
a director of Letter Winner Relations, just an all-around good dude who weathered the ear-splitting practices of Kevin O'Neill back in the day. That may be your greatest accomplishment, Steve.
No doubt. Guys, thanks for having me on. It's really weird and ironic that you just brought up the name of Kevin O'Neill. That's the 3rd time that someone has intimated that name to me in the last 7 days. So there must be something to that, right? Maybe there's a sign that we're supposed to get back together, or maybe I'm supposed to get an NIL deal or enter the portal or something. I don't know.
Well, you listen, in my way of thinking, Steve, you're owed a ton of NIL money for putting up. Kevin, I was one of those people, by the way, Bob. Steve and I visited on campus briefly last week, and I was kidding him about Kevin O'Neill. Let's get straight to it, Steve. You played the game at a high level. Were terrific player for Tennessee. When you lose a game like that at home, gut-wrenching game, what's most important? Because, Tennessee's still going to be in the tournament. They still got a chance to play their way out of this. But as a player, what's going through your mind now as you bounce back, practice tomorrow, and still have 2 more games to play before you get into the SEC tournament?
Chris, they say that all games are created equal or aren't created equal. This game, in and of itself, was a big one, right? Lots to play for on the line. A titanic matchup between 2 very good basketball teams that are vying for that coveted double bye over in Nashville, because you got 2 teams that are going to kind of limp in. I know that Alabama's won 8 in a row, but they've had some bumps and some bruises along the way. I talked to Coach Nate Oates about that yesterday, and this game was very important for him. They circled this game because they feel as though they needed another quad 1 signature win. So if you look at the 7 games they had won before, right? Okay, they'd beaten Ole Miss, they'd beaten the Mississippi State, they'd beaten the South Carolinas, but to have a resume builder in Tennessee at the Food City Center was gargantuan. And for Coach Barnes, you better believe he wanted that sweep, the season sweep over the Crimson Tide, to further solidify his chance to get the double bye. So as a player, I put really a lot of hopes and dreams and aspirations on that one game yesterday, because that game mattered. And you needed to look no further than the fact that we had 3 guys that were bloodied and bruised all over the facial area walking out of that game yesterday. It meant a whole lot to a whole lot of people. So as a player, man, it's hard to relinquish that feeling of like, man, we let one slip away. We had yet another lead. But man, you got to turn the page quickly to South Carolina, and then that becomes the ultimate trap game. South Carolina's got nothing to play for, but man, if you don't turn that page quickly enough, Alabama will essentially beat you twice, right? Because you don't get lathered up for the Gamecocks.
Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us, man. It's good to talk to you. I had the pleasure of meeting you for the first time back at the Tip-Off Club just a few weeks ago when Coach Barnes was there. So we sure do appreciate you spending some time with us. On that note, one of the things I saw post-game about in terms of Nate Oates' comments, we were just talking about how LeBaron Philon, how good he is. And he was on a minutes restriction last night. I guess that was good for us that he was. It could have been worse. He looked good. Reitzel looked good. But Nate Oates says we don't win that game without the way Aiden Sherrill played in the post. And I mean, you talked about it just a second ago about, bloody people, everything else. It was physical down there, man. And that's kind of, to me at least, that was kind of unlike Alabama basketball typically. I mean, I feel like they've got kind of a game plan that pretty predictable. We know who they are at this point. But last night we saw them in that second half, man. I felt like they really buckled down underneath. Sherrill's line was only 6 points and 8 boards, but 4 blocks, and he was a presence for sure.
Well, the one thing that you left out of that box score for Sherrill is the lack of foul trouble, right? Did not get into foul trouble. Again, talking to Coach Nate Oates at shoot around yesterday, he made the comment that was a little telling. More transparent and not as guarded as I thought he would be, in that he said, if Sherrill gets into foul trouble, we're done. I couldn't believe he said that, because he did not have the belief that the backup center could come in and to stave off the throng of bigs that Tennessee can employ at any given time. But the fact remains, the most important ability is availability. And the fact that Sherrill was able to stay on the floor for long stretches of time, not commit fouls, block 4 shots, what was really effective at setting on ball screens on the perimeter, which aided Philon, which aided Reitzel, Holloway to turn the corner, go right downhill, those NASCAR cuts that Jimmy Dykes talks about. Man, he played one heck of a basketball game yesterday. And, Coach Oates is exactly right. They don't win that game if Sherrill doesn't play the way that he played.
And it's interesting. I was just looking while you were talking about that. He played 33 minutes last night, and he averages on the season about 23 minutes a game. So to your point, keeping him out of foul trouble. And there was a reason Nate Oates was so pushy in trying to keep Charles Bediako around, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I looked at Sherrill yesterday, and you guys are old enough to remember the cut doctor, Ferdy Pacheco. Remember him? Oh, Ferdy Pacheco. That he in the corner, man, they would put ice on the back of his boxers' necks, man, so that they would, inhale a little bit more and breathe a little bit more. Well, that's what they were doing on the sidelines. Literally, they were putting ice packs on the back of Sherrill's neck just to give him that extra little bit. Because, man, he played some incredible monumental minutes, man, on that floor yesterday, and really willed them to a victory.
Steve, listen, we live in our hopes, dreams, and not what we think might not happen. So let's hope that Nate could come back and play. I thought at least he came back and played. That was a little bit of a good sign. And certainly that kid has an unbelievable career ahead of him. So you don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. So if he is out for a little bit, hopefully it's not long, you're looking at a Tennessee backcourt perimeter and listen, Gillespie was incredible last night. He was as good as it gets. What's got to happen now around him? Who needs to step up? Because you just can't. Certainly, it's a guards game when you get into the postseason. For the most part, you can't put too much on his shoulders. As you look at this team, the construction of this team, Steve, who has to really step up and be those guys who support him?
Chris, that's a really good question. I look at it through the prism of what we saw yesterday with Jacoby Gillespie was a microcosm of what we've seen all season long, particularly when you look at the double-digit blown leads that we've had. When you have Jacoby Gillespie continuously playing 36, 37, 38 minutes a game, he can't afford to take just a little bit of a breather, because what happens is you bring in an Ethan Berg, and I'm not knocking Ethan Berg. I love him as a kid. I think he's a developing player, but you bring him in and he immediately turns it over, right? You bring him in, and in the last 30 seconds of the game or the first half, we're holding for the last shot. But the ball gets reversed to Ethan in the corner, and he takes a three. And I look over at Coach Barnes, and his head is about to explode. Like,
Right.
Ethan, what are you doing, man? We're taking the last shot of this game. It's important. So then he's yanked, and he really doesn't essentially play effective minutes the rest of the way. Well, then you thought you'd relied on Troy Henderson, but he's kind of taken a step back as well. Then
Right.
you saw the reemergence of Amari Abram. So, like, and he hasn't played a whole lot, and we didn't expect for him to play a whole lot yesterday. So with all of that being said, Chris and Bob, because you don't have the backups, now all of a sudden Coach Barnes has no choice but to say, all right, get back in there. You've had 45 seconds of break of real time, so it's time for you to go back in. What worries me, I think Nate is going to be fine. I really do. I think they were being really cautious with him yesterday. He turned around. He had that turnaround jumper, and he walked, or he's running up the court, had a little hitch in his giddy up, a little gingerly, and they immediately took him out of the game. But I think that was just being very, very cautious with him. From that respect, I think he's going to be fine. But I think the bigger picture is, can we get some sustained guard play from anybody on the bench enough to spell Jacoby Gillespie? Because, look, at some point, we've seen this movie before with Zakai Ziegler, with Kennedy Chu. We've seen this movie before where you get to the postseason and their legs are just dead. They're done.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the most worrisome part of the Tennessee basketball team right now.
Let's stay on that for a second, because you just mentioned Zakai Ziegler, and I think this is a component on this team that's missing too, and I'm trying to correlate it with these blown leads. I mean, I know there's more to it than just what I'm getting ready to say, but it feels like, and look, Nate's a great kid. Jacoby, great kid. I mean, if you're a part of Barnes' system, got to be a good citizen and human being. Does anybody have that ability to, like, the killer that we used to have between, like, last season, Zakai and Jemai, and then the season before, with Santi and Triple J? And I just feel like we're almost like too nice. You know what I mean? I think maybe I remember talking to Coach Barnes last summer when he got Jalen Carey to come aboard, and he said Jalen could be as important to this team as anybody. And I think he thought maybe he was going to get some of that dog in him. And Jalen, I thought, played pretty well last night. He did what he needed to do, which was take the ball to the bucket, much better than what we saw in the loss to Missouri, right? I mean, got a lot of rebounds, but no points. But I just wanted to get your take from a guy who's been out on the floor. You've played at SEC level, et cetera. I mean, in this day and age, it feels awfully important to have that kind of killer mentality, right?
I believe the young people still refer to that as the Mamba mentality, right? Somebody that's just going to be a killer on the court and just flat out get after you, refuse to lose, will their team to a victory. And quite frankly, Bob, we just don't have that. I too must confess in that, look, I had a conversation with Jimmy Dykes in the spring of last year. And I walked up to Jimmy Dykes, and this was at Tom Black track of all places. I said, Jimmy, the most underrated transfer portal pickup in the SEC is, and he paused for just a second, and then he said, Jalen Carey. And I said, I think you're exactly right. Because if you go back and you look at what Jalen did versus Tennessee last year, he gave us all we wanted and more.
Absolutely.
He gave us 20 and 10 both times. But more than that, I vividly recall a moment where he stood not toe-to-toe, but he stood against Zakai Ziegler and tried to punk him. He tried to punk him at midcourt. But as you just intimated, Zakai had that dog in him. Jemai had that dog in him that they weren't going to back down. And we went on to win that ball game. But that's the dog that I expected Jalen Carey to be. And we keep getting glimpses of that. Yesterday, we saw some of that, man, where he just refused to be blocked out. He went through the chest of Sherelle, got to the basket, got to the free throw line. And then there's other times where he just disappears. And for me to be a really effective leader in that space, you got to be someone that's not high, that's not low, but that's always steady, guys. I got you. I got you. Let's go to work. Let's go to work. We got this. And we just don't have that on this basketball team right now. Now you juxtapose that with what you see on the perimeter with Jacoby Gillespie, nicest kid in the world. I don't know that he's a leader on the basketball team.
Right.
Bishop Boswell, great kid. Maybe a leader one day. Maybe he's that leader one day. I don't know. So we just don't have that, and I know that has really bothered Coach Barnes. Thus point to this season.
And it gets harder and harder too, Steve, when you're switching out your roster as much as not just Tennessee, all teams are, to develop those guys, which is what made just, Meshack and Zakai unicorns, that they were there for 4 years. You just don't see that anymore really in college basketball. And boy, when you have that, that leadership just permeates the whole team. Well, man, listen, you're looking clean, by the way, and I know you're on your way to church, and we appreciate you spending some time with us before going to get listen to the word. And you, I'm not going to be there with you, but I'll be there with you in spirit, brother.
Hey, man, that's all I need, man. That is all I need, man. We're gonna get the word in tonight, and we're gonna hit it hard next week and get this thing started. We got to get the Lady Vols back on the winning ways, and
Right.
and get this week ended up with the men and get things going back in the right direction.
Well, Steve, man, thanks for being such a great ambassador for the university, and it's hard to believe, man. So your last season was what?
So I tell people that I played when we had dinosaur parking. So that was back in 1995, 96, man. It's gone by so fast, man. Chris and Bob, I fully expect. I started losing my hair in my 30s. At some point, I fully expect the hair that grows in my ears and everywhere else is going to start to go on my head again, right?
There you go.
We can hope. We all can hope, Steve. Hey, listen, man, we really appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you on campus soon. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. Honored to be on with y'all.
Thank you, Steve. Take care, my man.
Stevie Hamer, as I said, VFL, just an all-around good guy. You can hear him on radio, TV, does a little bit of everything. Very involved with the letter winners at Tennessee. That's his daytime job over there at the university, and thanks to him for joining us, and very candid. And I agree with a lot of what he said, that there's a lot to be answered about this team as it goes forward. I have no doubt that they will fight. They are a terrific rebounding team, and the number of second chances they get at the basket is a testament to the culture on that team and the way they go after it, and what Rick Barnes drills every day. I don't know, and I thought this, Bob. I asked Coach Barnes about this in the offseason. As I look at even before Nate, and Nate's not a true two, but he certainly can play on the perimeter.
Sure.
And be one of those guys that can give you problems out there, and you can isolate him. But I wondered even before that if they had that other guy on the perimeter, that other guard, really two of those guys, that when Gillespie got in foul trouble or got hurt, and Stevie's right, man. When you have your point as much as on him right now, playing 36, 37 minutes, I'll never forget sitting behind the bench in Detroit a few years ago or last year, and it was right, 2 rows behind, and they come to timeout, and Zakai's sitting on the bench, and he was in incredible shape, as you know.
Yeah.
And you could tell, man, he was sucking wind. You play 30-plus games, and you're fighting through picks. People have no idea at that position how hard that is. And I worried about that with this team, back in October, November. If they just had the manpower on the perimeter, other guards that can make shots, who could get to the basket, who could give Jacoby some minutes to get some rest and be the lead guard. To me, if this team is going to make a run, and I'm not one of those who's ready to kick him to the curb, as you said, winning in Missouri is tough for anybody. Yeah. Alabama is a immensely talented basketball team. And when you've got a guard who's in the zone, the way Fallon was down the stretch,
Yeah.
and you could just see it in his eyes, his face. He knew no one was going to stop him. I mean, bless his heart, when JP got matched against him, it was like, this is over. And so, you blew the lead. That you can't keep blowing leads. I'm not ready to kick this team to the curb, but if they are going to make a run, to Stevie's point, they have got to find somebody else on the perimeter. And let's hope Nate can come back and play sooner as opposed to later. That's going to give them some points, give them some quality minutes, and take some pressure. And here's the key part, Bob. Take some of that pressure off of Jacoby Gillespie's shoulders.
Yeah, because, I mean, look, you said it, and I agree. Jacoby wasn't like the most efficient shooter last night. He was like 9 of 23. But I would argue that was his best game of the season. 26 points, I think 5 boards, 6 assists, 8 steals. He did it again.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, only 1 turnover in 36 minutes. I don't think we simply cannot ask any more of that kid. There's just no way.
He took the ball hard to the basket, too. There were a couple times that I felt like, just as I said about Fallon earlier, there were a couple of times I thought Jacoby could have got N1s and didn't get them.
Yeah.
And he's not the biggest guy, but he still, for his size, finishes pretty well. And when I say other guys, I don't mean that Baskerville has to score 14 or 15 points. Amari doesn't have to come off the bench to score 12. But those guys among them, Berg, you throw all those guys in there. Some of those guys are going to start making some shots. They're going to have to be guys that the defense respects, guys that they say, all right, we can't leave this guy wide open. Or this guy's got the ability to come in and make tough twos, and we just didn't see enough of that. And you're right. I mean, Tennessee, I don't think they made a 3 in the second half last night.
They didn't.
And Jacoby didn't shoot it as well as he's capable of down the stretch. He will shoot the ball better. But you know what? When it's easier to shoot the ball, Bob? When you got other guys making shots.
Well, yeah.
And you're not the one that everyone is shadowing. And when you're trying to drive in at 5'11" or 6 foot or whatever he is, that you got guys that are just swarming you because they're not really worried about anybody else in the perimeter, especially with Nate out. They're going to make shots. And I just can't emphasize that enough, that's to me, guard play over and above Jacoby will be, if this team can make a run, will be what helps them do that.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at those stat lines from last night, and again, I think I mentioned it earlier, 25 offensive rebounds, but they only converted that into 25 second chance points. So only about half of those offensive rebounds converted to something good. Our guys, our bigs, if you would tell me that between Estrella, Carey, and not even counting Dwayne Brown, Estrella, Carey, and Felix Okpara, that they would combine for 30 points and 23 rebounds, I would think we'd be in pretty good shape. But we actually still shot like under 50% at the rim. Yeah. So we missed opportunities there. Nate was out. Felix was under the weather, by the way, too. So there were a lot of curveballs. It's not excuses, but, to your point, all's not lost. But now they're in a position where they need, if you're thinking about trying to get one of those top 4 positions for the double bye, they need to win both their remaining games against South Carolina and Vandy, and then they need a little help. They need Missouri and or Kentucky, really both of them, to lose a game. And Kentucky's got a tough road, man. They got to go to Texas A&M, who's faltering a little, but it's still on the road at College Station. And also they got to play Florida. And Florida's, I'm beginning to think Florida's could be the 4th team completing that Final Four lineup with Duke and Michigan and Arizona.
I wouldn't want to play them. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I certainly, with their balance and they got bigs, they got guards, and they got depth. They are much like last year, seeming to really turn it on at just the right time. I've told you we've talked about it for 3 or 4 weeks. I thought they were the class.
Yeah.
The SEC, I think they're one of the best 4 teams in the country. And it, the tournament, the SEC tournament, this may not be the kosher, the politically correct thing to say. Sometimes I think the fewer the games you play in that tournament, you don't want to go in and play one game and just be awful. Remember 2 years ago, Tennessee was awful against Mississippi State and lost
Oh yeah, got
in that
blitzed.
first game. Now they still made it to the Elite Eight.
Yeah.
But that's you don't want to come out of that tournament with that kind of bad taste. So you want to play well. Man, if you're playing 3 straight days in that tournament, because remember, there's no break like there is in the NCAA. You're playing 3. Let's say you win. Let's say Tennessee doesn't get the double bye and they have to play an earlier game, and then you're in the quarters, correct? And if you win that, you're in the semi. That's 3 straight games. I don't know where your legs are, especially if you're a team, as we talked about earlier, that doesn't have the depth in the backcourt as you go into the NCAA. So, to your point, I think it's more important for Tennessee to play well this last week of the regular season. Take care of business in Columbia, South Carolina. Come back, protect your home court against Vanderbilt. Get some of your mojo back. Go into the tournament. Hey, whatever happens, happens. Play good basketball. Get some rest, and then go play what's obviously the most important games you're going to play all season, and try to be some fresh legs and play with some energy and some confidence. I will say this: we saw it once already this year when, quite frankly, Bob, I thought the wheels might come off when they lost to Kentucky at home and blew that 17-point lead. They blew a 13-point lead yesterday against Alabama. They didn't come off against Kentucky. And knowing Rick Barnes the way I do and knowing the way he coaches his basketball team, the thing I would be most surprised about is to see the wheels come off. I think this team still has some juice in the tank, and we'll find out for sure this week. Because, again, I think these last 2 games in the regular season, we find out a lot about this basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny too is, like, metrically speaking, which again, it does matter come like NCAA tournament selection time, et cetera. This team, even after that loss, the 2 losses, the Vols are ranked 18th in Ken Palm. They're 15th in Bart Torvik. They're still 20th in the net rankings. So those oracles, if you will, that talk about college sports and college basketball particularly, they still see Tennessee as the numbers don't lie. I mean, it's a frustrating team to watch. We've been seeing it firsthand, but honestly, I think that, again, right now, if the season ended right now, Tennessee would be the 6th seed in the conference tournament. So that means they would not get the double bye. They would get a single bye, but they'd start that gauntlet on Thursday night, actually in the late game on Thursday night, and would have to play again late game on Friday. And if they somehow won those games, CeeLo, then it gets tough because they go into the semifinals on Saturday, and those are like in the afternoon. So then the turnarounds get real. And I'm with you. It's like, man, whatever we could do to get to that double bye to let these guys rest. I'm thinking about Nate, most importantly, too. I mean, that would be huge. But the only way we got a shot at that, to your point, is take care of business. They got to take care of business here in this coming week.
Well, we've seen it both ways too. They get to the final last year against Florida, still got to the final 8. They get bounced in the first game they play 2 years ago, and still get to the final 8. I still think just playing good basketball in the season is the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, let's give a quick shout out to our sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group, friends of the show. They are your local insurance team. They are proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all. Maybe they don't get as bloodied up as our guys did on Saturday, but they show true volunteer spirit for our community. From home and auto to business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And most notably, I want to really emphasize this. They care about what you care about, because this is where they live too. They're part of this community. The Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner right here at home. If you want to learn more, you can certainly give them a call at 865-862-8233. That's 865-862-8233. They will be happy to talk to you about their suite of services and products that they have. You can also learn more about them if you go to their website, tateinsurancegroup.com, tateinsurancegroup.com. And as always, we surely appreciate their support of the Lowdown. Yeah, this basketball thing, this time of year always gets me going, Chris, because I love basketball. I'm from the state of Indiana originally, but so I want to have a good basketball team. And sometimes our patience gets tested here. But like you said, you know, I saw a lot last night on social media, and I got asked to call into the radio station I work at, the post game show on that, and there were a lot of people. The drill, doing the whole "I'm out on this team, I'm out on Barnes," and it's like, just calm down, man. It's And by the way, this team, it. Our colleague at Rocky Top Insider, Ryan Shumpert, put out a piece today. He said, Tennessee basketball, I think he titled it, Tennessee basketball has been telling us all season long who they are. We should listen. It's like, this is who they are. We know that there's some shortcomings there, but they've still got capability to do some work in the tournament, but it begins with just playing some consistent ball. And now's the time. It's now or never, really.
Yeah, I read Ryan's column. It was really good, and I think he's dead on. This is a team that has struggled to put teams away this year. It's a team that has made a lot of untimely turnovers. I mean, even as you're exactly right. They didn't make a lot of turnovers last night. Boy, the ones they made,
yeah,
were bad ones and careless ones. Coaches can deal with turnovers. If you're trying to make a move to the basket and trying to get your guy, a lob pass or something, but when you're 30 feet away and you make a lazy pass or you one-handed passes where you're not looking at your teammate, those are the kind of things, man, that get you beat, or trying to throw the ball across the court every single time. That was a one-possession game last night. So on 2 or 3 of those turnovers, if you score, it's the difference in the game. To your first point about this team and people being out on them, listen, I think Rick Barnes and Tennessee basketball right now are probably a victim of their own success. I think we're probably all spoiled.
Oh, yeah.
When we look at sort of how consistent they've been, you go back and look in the last 3 or 4 years, they've been to Sweet 16s, they've been to 2 Final 8s, they've beaten team, and they went in the top 25 for how many straight weeks in a row. The consistency, probably when you get used to that, fans, they want more. And I get it. I understand you. I watched this team too and thought, man, what in the world's going on here? They have been inconsistent. But this league outside Florida, now Bama, I think, is really, really talented. And if they get the right matchup with their guard play, and Stevie's right, they're lean inside, okay?
Yeah.
But boy, their guard play, they got 3 guys that can take it to the basket and can score. And if 2 or 3 of those guys are scoring and hitting, they're going to be a tough out for anybody. But I don't see anybody in this league, really, as it's played out, that's appreciably better than Tennessee than Florida. Maybe Alabama, but let's not forget they wanted Alabama when they had Bediako. So let's wait and see what happens. It's a big deal how healthy Nate will be. I mean, if Nate, injuries are part of the game, but we can sit here and point the finger all day long. If Nate's in there and plays his normal game, even if he has 10 points, they win last night. So I still don't think they're that far off. They're limited in the backcourt. I've thought that since the first of the season, that they were going to struggle just numbers-wise, not having that guy there. But if anybody really wants Rick Barnes out, really legitimately wants him out as coach and wants to move forward, you know what my response is that? You better be careful what you wish for.
Absolutely.
And mostly it's people who haven't been around for a long time and seen Tennessee basketball as long as I have and have a feel that this program, if you want to go 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, what it is and what it isn't. They are a top 15 team, top 20 team year in and year out. And if that's not good enough, hey, ask Texas. If they would have liked to have had Rick Barnes after they booted him out at Texas over the last few years, see what their response. Little known fact, they came back after him. Rick had a chance to go back to Texas a few years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know how well known that is. And they wanted him back. Now, just like UCLA made a big run for him. He said, no, he's going to stay. Same here. He stayed. But I just would say, again, be careful. Be careful what you're wishing for.
Look how quickly it's changing for Auburn, right? I mean, that's another example, right? With all due respect to Stephen Pearl, I mean, hopefully he gets a little more time, but they're 15 and 14 now. I mean, tough schedule, I get it, but I mean, yeah, I mean, and they weren't calling for his dad's ouster, but Bruce stepped aside, and they made the change. The fan base probably thought they weren't going to skip a beat, but it's not that easy, right?
No, and I think part of it is, Florida makes a coaching change a few years ago. They win a national title. They certainly have a chance to win one this year. And it's only, I mean, I don't want to beat up on the Tennessee fans per se, because it's only natural. You look around at your rivals and you say, well, wow, look at Florida. They brought in this hotshot coach.
Yep.
He won a national title. Nate Oates has gotten Alabama to a Final Four. Bruce goes to Auburn, gets them to 2 Final Fours, the national title game. So, listen, Tennessee's got all the resources in the world. They paid big money to get in the likes of Ament and Jacoby Gillespie. The fan base, the arena, the crowd. I mean, everything's there. And that's why Rick will tell you he took the job. He talked to Cal about it. Cal says, hey, it's a great job. Take it. And he did. And I think he's sort of he's elevated the expectations. I think any coach will tell you, yeah, you want to win championships. Yeah, in basketball, you want to go to the Final Four, which Tennessee, by the way, has never done. But as much as anything, Bob, you want to raise the expectations. And I think that's what Rick's done, even over and above what Bruce did. And Bruce did an unbelievable job of resurrecting Tennessee basketball, from the dead. And I think Rick has taken that, matched it, and probably even taken it to another level from where it was under Bruce Pearl. They just haven't been able to get to that next step, and that's getting to a Final Four. And, you just never know. Draw, injuries, there's a lot of things that go into that. I still say I wouldn't kick this team to the curb yet. Let's see how they respond.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's still ball to play, so we'll be monitoring that. Let's pivot to another Tennessee program that's just a mess, Chris. Tennessee baseball. They are. If you were, again, to listen, you want to talk about being a victim of their own success. Boy, that's an example right there. After we did our show last weekend, Tennessee was putting the finishing touches on losing a series to Kent State. Not for nothing, Kent State's probably an NCAA tournament team. They're probably going to win. They're predicted to win the Mid-American Conference. It's a good baseball team, and we know how baseball is. The world's a little more flat in that space. But there was a lot of chatter. Tennessee went to Dallas to play in the Amegy Bank Round Robin Invitational this weekend. This was their first test against higher level, quote unquote, higher level competition. Including their first game on Friday against top-ranked UCLA. I'd say in that first game, Chris, I think we saw why UCLA, I know they have a couple losses, but there's a reason they're ranked number 1 in the country. They have some serious offense. Josh Elander said it. I mean, to quote him, they punched Tennessee in the mouth on Friday, beating the Vols 12-5.
Yeah, well, and Tennessee knew how good UCLA was. That wasn't a surprise.
Yeah.
And you'll see that, I think, play out over the season. But listen, baseball is such a weird sport. I remember sitting in Charlotte several years ago and watching Charlotte beat Tennessee 9-0. That was a year right after the COVID year. And you just never know early on. I think the fact is Tennessee has not lost early non-conference games, very rarely, if any, when Vitello was there. And then to lose the series to Kent State. But you look around the SEC this year already, there are a lot of those losses to teams that you wouldn't think some of the schools in the SEC would lose to. I'll tell you what I like best about this team so far is I think starting pitching is pretty good. I think they can put a really good starting rotation Friday, Saturday, Sunday on the mound as they go into the SEC play. Now, the bullpen has not been great. They've had their moments, walks and hit batsmen. But even in Dallas, the first game, and you go back to the Kent State games, the way the starters pitched, were pretty good. Tennessee's got to hit better. And I think that's the thing. They've got some timely hits, and to come back and win against Arizona State yesterday, Virginia Tech today, I think says a lot about this team and its culture. But it's such an unfinished product right now. Let's wait and see once they start SEC play, how some of these new faces, how the bullpen comes around. Guys are going to start hitting. I saw some Coach Elander said I loved it. They're asking about Levi Clark. That he's struggling, hadn't been hitting the ball well, and he's a guy last year as a freshman showed a lot of pop. And he said, "Listen, he's my guy. I feel good about him. I understand that he's not hitting the way he wants to or any of us want to right now, but I'm not going away from him. He's going to be there." And today, probably the biggest hit of the game is he laces that double down the left field line. And I think that's guys want to play for coaches like that. And baseball is one of those games where you're going to fail a whole heck of a lot more than you're going to succeed. And I do think this team may not be the strongest, the most talented. They're certainly not going to be able to play King Kong ball hitting home runs like we're used to Tennessee doing over the last 3 or 4 years. But there's so much baseball left to be played. And I do like the fact that I think every weekend series, they're going to come at you with 3 starters who have a chance to pitch really good baseball and give you a chance to win.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth on that. Tennessee, they lose that first game, and then they win 2, one against a good Arizona State team. They beat them 4-3, and then they win today against Virginia Tech, like you mentioned, 3-1. And my biggest takeaway there was just what you said. It's like this may be a different kind of Tennessee team in terms of what we'll expect to get to victories, and it might be the pitching. You're right. I mean, Tegan Kuhns, I didn't think Tegan Kuhns even pitched that badly against UCLA. I mean,
No, he didn't.
He got popped a few times, but again, man, they've got this Gasparino kid who transferred from Texas. He's got 10 home runs already. They're on a heater. There's no doubt about it. And then between Landon Mack and Evan Blanco, I think we're seeing good pitching. And you're right about the bullpen, although today was a promising sign because today between Mark Hindy, who transferred in from Duke, and then Braden Krenzel, holdover from last season, they locked it down for Blanco after a strong 5 innings. So, Hindy came in, got 2 outs, and then the last 3 innings was all Krenzel. I'll take wins however we can get them. It's always entertaining to be able to see long balls left and right. It may not be that way. I think we'll get better at it than we've been so far. Like you said, the bats need to come around a little. But I think this construction of this team is going to be different. Some people have already started complaining about it, and it's like, it's a 60-game season, man. Give it a little bit of time because, again, many different ways you can win baseball games.
I've talked to a lot of coaches, football, basketball, baseball, and Tennessee sometimes, and I'm going to take up for the fans a little bit here. Tennessee fans sometimes get a bad rap that, that their passion runs overboard or I got a good buddy of mine. He loves to say that nobody eats their own like Tennessee. And maybe there's a little truth to that, but it's been a bad up until Heupel came, and I know last year was a disappointment, but it was a bad 2 decades for Tennessee football.
Yeah.
Before Barnes gets there, that the time between Pearl and Barnes was not fun. And then Tony just completely resurrected the baseball program. But the passion of the Tennessee fan base, and this is the point I'm trying to get to, is sort of really what makes the place. And it's why I sat down with Coach Heupel last week. I got a big story coming out tomorrow on On3 on Josh, and this will be his 6th season, pivotal season for him after the disappointing end to the 2025 season. Only 2 coaches in the SEC at their current schools have been there longer than Josh Heupel, Kirby Smart and Eli Drinkwitz. That's it.
Wow.
It's a league that chews up and spits out coaches. Now, some of them have moved elsewhere. Lane goes from Ole Miss to LSU. But my point is this. Josh said, listen, that passion, that hunger, 365 days of the year, those expectations, he said, that's why I want to be here. That's what any coach wants.
Sure.
Now, the tricky part is staying on the right side of that passion. And that's sometimes easier said than done. But I do think that's a lot of what makes Tennessee sports and athletics and Vol Twitter and Vol Nation what it is because even during the dry spells, even when your football team is not relevant, your basketball team, just can't seem to get over that hump, they keep showing up. And I don't think any coach or any player wants to be somewhere that there's any kind of apathy whatsoever, or any kind of settling for, okay, we had a bad year. You mentioned Auburn basketball earlier. Auburn may not make the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And you go back to LSU in football. They just fired their head football coach. Football, again, Josh Heupel in 5 years has never had a losing season. In those same 5 years, only 3 other schools in the SEC, Bama, Georgia, and Ole Miss, have not suffered through at least one losing season. So to me, as a fan, you're a fan, you're a supporter, you're a donor, it's that consistency that matters. And I think in basketball, certainly, football and baseball, when you look at the 3 main sports, I understand the Lady Vols, are really starting to dip right now this year. But consistency, don't ever underestimate or ever underappreciate how important that is to have a team that every time you play, every time you go out there, you feel like you got a chance to win. And certainly in the 3 main men's sports over the last several years, that's been the case. You can't say that at many other SEC schools.
No, amen, man. That I agree with you on all of that. As far as baseball goes, it's getting real, right? This was so the Vols are now 8-3. They have 5 games this week. Okay, they Tuesday against ETSU, Wednesday against Oakland. All these are at home, by the way, and then a weekend series with Wright State, which, by the way, Wright State can play some ball too. So I mean, this is these are games that you got to go and put that helmet on and get ready to go and then there's only one more midweek game next week. And after that, it's on. SEC play begins at Georgia. So I'm happy with those guys coming out of Dallas, winning 2 out of 3. I had my eyes wide open about UCLA. That would have been great to maybe knock them off, but that's a hell of a team. So I think it went about as good as it could, short of winning all 3. So we'll take it. And we'll just continue to see. But like you said, work in progress. And you're right about this. That's why those coaches, they're the ones we've got are pretty thick skinned, but that's why they want to be here, right? Because this, there's so much
matters to so many people. And
absolutely,
it's such UT is such woven in the fabric of this community and certainly across the state.
Yep.
And there's a hunger. There's a hunger to get back to winning championships. And they have won championships in baseball and basketball. It's hard. I mean, I think this is right, Bob. 8 different schools in the SEC have been to the SEC championship game of football since Tennessee. And yet Tennessee went to the playoff. I think the landscape has changed a little bit in
right.
football. I don't think fans care so much anymore about SEC championships and playing the SEC championship game. The environment now basically is if you don't make the playoff, you've had a bad year.
Yep.
And that's sort of the end all. That you got to make the playoff, especially with 12 teams. Tennessee did make the playoff 2 years ago and got boat raced by the eventual national champion. So I think the next step for football is to make some noise in the playoff. But it's been a great run. And I think 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, a lot of people will look back at the last 5 or 6 years. Again, when you look at the main, and not even the main 3, look at what the weeklies have done in softball. I mean, you look across the board and they'll say, well, that was a pretty darn good run when it comes to Tennessee athletics. I mean, we forget, and I don't want to go on too much of a tangent. Florida football, how many losing seasons they had in the last 4
Oh, yeah. No, very good point.
And basketball, I mean, as good as basketball is now in this league, there are a lot of teams that are up and down. You look at what LSU, some of the struggles LSU's had, what Auburn's doing this year. So I would say sit back sometimes, and the best thing you can do, Bob, is enjoy the ride.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, it's crazy to think. I think last season, Kentucky basketball, right, as blue blood as you're going to find, they made the Sweet 16 last year. We took them out. Proud of that. But Kentucky, that was their first Sweet 16 in like 4 or 5 years.
Right.
I mean, is as big a program as you can find. It's just it's that tough and it's that diverse now. So, and hopefully the Lady Vols will get it going. We'll close with that 6-game losing streak. They lost another one today to Vanderbilt, I was at the game, a very, very good team, man, top 5, and they deserve that ranking. Tennessee played well for about 3 quarters and just didn't have enough gas. And, Vandy might have the National Player of the Year in Michaela Blakes.
Boy, she's good.
Oh,
She's the women's version of Phylon, man. She can go. She can shoot. She can get to the basket. She is a lot of fun to watch play.
Yep. So the Lady Vols are now 16-12. They have a first round bye, a single bye in the conference tournament that begins this week in Greenville. I think their brand name alone, as long as they go and make a decent showing in the tournament, even if they lose, but I think they'll win their first round game in the tournament. But they've had a tough season and a tough schedule. And, I know a lot of people are ready to be out on Kim Caldwell. I don't think that will happen. I think she gets another season at least, but she's got to get her players in there. This wasn't the right mix. And we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen with other programs, whether it's football or basketball. The portal isn't always a slam dunk.
No, it's, second year. Her system is such a unicorn.
Yeah.
The way they play. And so she's got another. And listen, Tennessee spent money in women's basketball. It's not like that they're not writing checks comparable to anybody else in the women's game. So, we know what the standard is. I mean, Pat Summitt set that standard, and this is not to that standard, not even close.
Sure.
But I don't think, you say, well, 2 years, adios amigo, let's start over. We'll see what they do. But no, she knows that as well as anybody, that they've got her.
Yeah.
She's going to play that way, which is the way she plays. That was, you go back to Danny White's comments when they hired her. That's sort of what he was looking for. He was looking for something a little bit different.
Yeah.
The type of play that she wants to, utilize. But if you're going to play that way, you better make sure you got the players. You got to make sure you got players that fit and players that are experienced enough and are going to buy in completely. And it seems like with this team this year, watching them, that hasn't always been the case. And certainly they got to get better on defense. They just when you play that way up and down the court, you're going to give up some points. But they don't guard. They really don't guard at all, Bob.
Oh, they got shredded today. Multiple occasions where Vanderbilt would have somebody at the back, just even in a half-court press. Yeah. They'd have a wide-open player. I mean, that just, that's going to kill you eventually. But time will tell. Time will tell. All right, my friend, that does it for this week. Another episode in the books, and we appreciate everybody giving us a watch or a listen. As always, many thanks to our great sponsor, the Tate Insurance Group. And we'll be back next week to preview the SEC tournament for Vols men's basketball. Probably recap a little of the ladies and see how they did in the SEC tournament. We'll know their fate by then. And we'll continue to check in on Vol baseball too. Again, very hectic week ahead for them. As always, we'll cover it all for you during the week right here. Keep it locked in on Rocky Top Insider for the best Tennessee Vol coverage anywhere. Reminder to hit that like and subscribe button for the show on YouTube. Download our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. CeeLo, appreciate you being a part of this. It's always fun. We want to thank Steve Hamer for coming and joining us tonight. But Chris is the guy who pulls these guests, man, and you do a wonderful job. So thank you, my friend.
It's great. It's great catching up with us. Had a lot of good folks to join us, and I appreciate you, Bob, and look forward to doing this all again next Sunday.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you again for watching and listening. We'll look forward to talking to you right here again next time in 1 week on the RTI Lowdown.